Dogfighting is perhaps the most malicious and cruel sport in the United States. There are an estimated 10 to 15,000 participants in this sport, either as promoters, handlers of dogs, owners of dogs, or spectators.
On Channel 17 Reports this week, we'll examine the issue of dog fighting, which some claim is a sport, but what law enforcement and animal welfare officials charge is a cruel and inhumane blood sport. We'll also explore the illegal aspect of the pit bull terriers in vicious combat, as well as the crackdown by various agencies. We wish to inform you that some of the scenes in this documentary may be offensive to some viewers because of the vivid presentation of the bloodletting in the pits. But we feel that these scenes should be shown to make you aware of the pain and suffering inflicted in such encounters. Dogfighting is increasing in the United States and Canada. It's basically an event for profit through gambling and breeding of dogs for the ring. Until recently, it was almost unheard of in New York State. But in the last year, there have been a dozen arrests and convictions in Rochester. Now it appears that there's an effort to bring dogfighting into the Buffalo area. In September, a Sherman Street home was raided following what may have been a pit bull match.
We have a continual investigation going on about dog fighting and dog napping or picking up of stray unidentified dogs. We did get a tip and at the same time that the Buffalo police got a tip that there was an episode on the Buffalo East Side. 3 of our agents went down during the evening and joined the Buffalo police and obtained a search warrant to enter the premises. There they found 2 pit bulls, alive pit bulls, 1 mutilated pit bull in a plastic bag in a garbage can, and 1 husky. We have the 3 alive animals in our kennels at this point, and a warrant has been issued for the arrest of the individual who owns the home.
What happens to the animals that were confiscated from this pit bull fight? You have them. What are you going to do with them?
Well, we are under the jurisdiction of the court at this point, but humanely, what we did was to take them to a vet and start a series of veterinary care for the animals. They were in bad shape and needed treatment. They are now in good shape and are being socialized by our kennel staff.
I can't see these animals being offered as house pets, can you?
Well, that depends. They have a good relationship with humans, but if they are trained to such a point that they cannot differentiate between the relationship between humans, which is affectionate, and the training they have received to become aggressive against other dogs, that would be the issue as to whether they would become good companion pets.
On December 9th, an injured pit bull terrier was found abandoned in front of a Michigan Avenue home. It had fresh wounds, the type that might have come from a battle in the ring. Some investigators feel he may have been left to die after losing a fight. Area residents told police they had no knowledge of the dog's owner, so the animal was taken to the city animal shelter for treatment and care. The incidents prompted members of the Erie County SPCA to arrange for seminars on dogfighting at the Buffalo Police Training Academy. 2 representatives of the Humane Society of the United States flew in from Washington to hold training sessions for investigators. Dogfighters operate deep underground. Investigations are difficult and dangerous for undercover operators, and security precautions are extreme.
Fights occur every weekend in every region of the country. There are at least 2,000 to 3,000 dogs actively engaged in fighting. And a typical evening will include a match of maybe 5 different matches of paired dogs. The American Pit Bull Terrier is the breed which is exclusively used in dog fighting. This dog is related to the American Staffordshire Terrier. It is different only in that it is bred not for appearance, but for aggressiveness, what the dog fighters call gameness. The dog is extremely aggressive. This is apparent in its dealings with all other animals. The dog is so aggressive that it has to be muzzled to be bred, even kept around litter mates. When it reaches a certain stage of maturity, they will begin fighting. So the animals are kept on very heavy chains, separated from one another at all times if they are to be trained for fighting. Dog fighting is perhaps the most malicious and cruel sport in the United States. There are an estimated 10 to 15,000 participants in this sport, either as promoters, handlers of dogs, owners of dogs, or spectators. This sport is illegal in all 50 states of the United States, and by specific federal code, an amendment to the Animal Welfare Act was passed in 1976, making dog fighting and, in fact, cockfighting illegal if the animals are transported across state lines.
As the chief investigator for the Humane Society of the United States, where do you go and how do you infiltrate the pit fights?
We depend a great deal on information that comes to us. Strangely, a lot of the information we receive comes from spouses, usually wives of dog fighters, who are alarmed and upset about the fact that their husband is involved in it. And while they have tried in their own way to try to convince him not to be involved in it, after that fails, oftentimes they'll turn to us for help because they simply want to help and get their husband out of it. That's one source. Other sources, strangely, come from people who fight dogs or have in the past, and after having done so, have been repulsed by it and sort of want to mend their ways. And we've determined a great deal of information from those sources, too. People who are, after a while, are sickened by it all and want to perhaps correct some of the things that they've done.
Why is enforcement of the law so difficult?
In many cases, strangely, it has to do with the penalties that are involved and what priorities are set on it by policing agencies. This is one of the primary reasons that we feel that converting laws to felonies, where they are currently misdemeanors, is so critical. These are hard economic times for everybody, and most particularly for the public agencies such as police departments. And I can fully understand the reluctance of a police department to say, hey, we just can't afford to spend $20,000 on this investigation because even if we're successful, it's going to result in what is tantamount to a traffic fine, someone not putting money in the parking meter. I can appreciate that, and I can understand that. So by changing it to a felony, we put a whole new emphasis on it, which allows policing agencies the opportunity to be far more flexible and, in fact, invest more money into enforcing the law.
It has been our experience, and we have had probably a dozen raids this year alone and many more in previous years, that dog fighters come from every socioeconomic class. We are aware of a doctor in West Virginia that breeds and maintains 50 active fighting dogs. We are aware of race car drivers, entertainers, cops, judges, veterinarians, construction workers, truckers, housewives, and children that have and fight pit bull terriers. Most fighters, handlers, and spectators are streetwise or rural people. They are punks, if you will, with a predisposition toward violence. Matter of fact, if you spend any time undercover with these people, you will find that most of them carry concealed weapons, brag about certain events where snitches or people that they did not trust were beaten up, people that cheated them in a bet at a fight were beaten up, severely injured. This is all good time stories at a pit bull convention. Many handlers, spectators, and promoters have prior criminal records. Primarily, we find, for assault, illegal gambling, possession of concealed weapons, and drugs.
How does a successful raid come off? What kind of preparations do you do in advance and so forth?
It's extraordinary the amount of preparation that goes into one of these. In fact, we've worked with narcotics officers on a number of occasions who can't believe all of the preparations that are necessary to ensure, to some degree, that it'll be successful. But we'll go to all sorts of code systems. We go to reporting systems that we feel that will not be detected. We've hidden notes underneath the bathroom toilet seats. We've done all sorts of things to try to ensure that we're not detected in gathering the intelligence required to do a successful bust.
Under the Agriculture Market Law, Article 26, Sections 351 and 52, you cannot, it is misdemeanor, there is a fine of up to $1,000 and or a year in jail or both. We would like to see it a lot stiffer than that, though.
Does that go for spectators or just the promoters?
That's spectators, promoters, owners of the premises, everyone.
Now, if we get evidence in one of these places and visualize, say, there's 50, 60 people in it, 50, 60 people are going to be arrested. That's what the law calls for. I've talked to the district attorney about it, and they said it's perfectly legal and lawful to arrest the spectators. So no one will leave that premises if we do get the evidence.
In addition to the gambling aspect connected with pit bull fighting, what other vices are present?
Well, principally gambling. There's some evidence where it is strong in the southern part of the country. There's some evidence of some prostitution taking place there, and there's also evidence of extensive drugs taking place there. And many of these reports and the files that we get from the southern states and from the officers from Washington and so on are that many of these people are armed that attend these fights. And with the extensive gambling and so on that goes on, you can see there's nothing but trouble. And also, there's evidence that they will set up for selling booze, similar to a speakeasy. And when they go in there in the southern states, the officers are fully equipped with shotguns, bulletproof vests, so they expect the worst. Now, we haven't seen that here. I hope we don't.
Another thing that we are finding is that the dogs are frequently allowed to fight prior to, or they call it roll, to have practice combats prior to going to the scheduled fight. For this practice match, they will not use two pit bull terriers. They will take the dog which is in training and pit him against another dog of a different breed, which stands no chance of winning in the combat. Quite frequently, they will use a German Shepherd or a dog that they're able to pick up as a stray or something like that. During the training process, a pit bull in training may kill several animals, many of which are family pets or stolen animals.
Do you know of any cases of dog napping in Erie County?
We get constant reports of dog napping. A couple of months ago, several calls from the southern tier that there was a van circulating around unidentified, picking up stray dogs. One of the problems of dog napping is that people let their animals run at large, so that all they have to do is to go around. There has been a report in the Park Central area of young teenagers being assigned the project of picking up Pacific breeds of animals for a Pacific price, and they have been supposedly used as part of this dog fighting.
Some critics say that the police are wasting tax dollars by going after the dog fighters when they could be concentrating on human crime.
No, I don't agree with that. What I would say there is that we're concentrating on all-time kind of crimes all the time. We're in any type of investigation. This type of investigation may well lead to other types of crimes. In fact, if these people are walking around illegally carrying guns, dangerous weapons, drugs, and so on, these are criminal people. They're not ordinary people. They're not just ordinary, good, hard-working citizens. What the hell? If they're carrying guns, they're carrying knives, they're involved in all kind of gambling, prostitution, booze, and so on, they're criminal people, or subculture of crime. These are the people that lead to violent crime. So in response to your question, I would say that while we're fighting and combating the pit dog fighting, that we're also combating crime.
What determines the end of a fight?
Strangely, a lot of people who are just finding out about this would naturally think that the end of the fight is determined when one animal dies or is killed. Such is not the case. Usually the winner is determined by which animal first loses its ability to fight or its instinct or its desire to fight. And they have a specific test that they use in order to determine it. Once an animal fails this aggressiveness test, the match is over. Now that may occur very quickly, and it could occur in terms of very few minutes. It could go for as long as an hour, 2 hours, and even on some cases exceed 3 hours in duration. It's absolutely phenomenal the amount of stamina that these animals have. Ironically, there's a number of cases reported where a match will first start and the other animal, one of the animals that are involved would absolutely be terrified of the experience, would jump over the pit wall in order to get away from the other dog. It doesn't happen often, but it can happen. And of course that's a point of extreme embarrassment on the part of the animal's owner. And under those types of circumstances, an animal owner has been known to bring the dog back into the pit and shoot him right in front of the spectators, just to illustrate to everybody that he didn't want to be accused of perpetuating a dog that was a coward.
Is it safe to have a pit bull as a family pet?
In some situations, it is. There are a significant number of pit bulls which are not bred for their fighting ability. And people breed them for such characteristics as intelligence and loyalty and conformation, how they look. These animals may make a very good pet. Even a dog bred for fighting may make a very good pet. They can be very gentle around people, and they are no more apt to attack people than any of the other breeds. What is worrisome about the pit bull breed is their immense power and their love of a fight. Once they begin an attack, they will continue until death or they are removed.
I give you a typical example of how it occurs. The dogs are chained in the back, perhaps it's asleep. A small child walks into its field of vision, startles it, the animal awakens, and like many people and all of us, when you first awake, you're sort of disoriented. The animal it can go through what is known as misdirected aggression. It sees a figure and it's just instinct, and it'll go for it, hit, attack, and whereas 10 minutes prior to the attack, the animal would lick your hand, and 10 minutes after the attack, it would do the same. Yet during that very brief period, it can attack. And this can occur with any breed, not just the pit bull, but the difference is with the pit bull is the extraordinary strength that it has, where a lesser dog of lesser strength might attack a child and cause some very severe wounds and perhaps tears and stitches required. The same duration of attack with a pit bull could be devastating and can in fact kill.
These sentiments are heartily expressed in the city of Tonawanda home, where a gentle and lovable Peaches apparently doesn't know she is a pit bull terrier. How is your pit bull with children?
She's a terrific babysitter. We have friends with youngsters, at 2-3-year-old age group, and when they come over to visit, we usually put the baby in our bed, and Peaches will go and lay down with the baby and keep an eye on her, and then we can visit or play cards or whatever. If the baby moves or turns over or whatever, she'll come and get us, let us know that she's not at ease with whatever's happening around her. As far as playing with children, the 2-year-old, who she does not know that well, has only seen on a few occasions, has been known to stick her little arm right down her throat, and she'll gag before she'll, do anything. She's had her ears pulled excessively without any reaction, and she's just a real gentle baby. She really is.
What kind of advice would you give to someone who is seeking a pit bull puppy as a pet? Where do you look, and what do you look for, and what don't you look for?
Well, you don't look, in my opinion, you don't look for a dog that's been bred from fighting stock. There are so many people who subscribe to the fighting theory. It's unfortunate. I wouldn't look for a dog that showed aggressive tendencies. I would want to meet or see both the male and the female the sire of the litter, and especially the sire, because the males have a tendency to be a little more aggressive. And if the dog was coming from active fighting stock, I would avoid it, because I think that the tendency is going to be there for the dog to be more aggressive.
Not all pit bull owners object to dog fighting, even though their own terriers are not involved in the sport. James D. of Buffalo tells us why.
I feel it's misrepresented. When I was in Mexico, where such sports are legal, they had a small wall, maybe 2 foot. Dog got tired of combat, as they term it. He just jumped the pit. Fight's over. Both dogs afterwards are wagging their tails, licking their masters. I saw no crushing injuries, no dogs being brutalized, tormented, dragged around a pit. I believe it's a sensational issue. I have with me a clipping from the Houston Chronicle, Houston being in Texas, a very large city, I believe the fastest growing city in the United States today. The front page had some very graphic photos of a dog bust, supposedly. And after taking up 1/3 of the front page and saying continued on page 7, you finish reading page 7, and it was about a 2 by 2.5 inch article of a little boy whose tennis ball went over a fence, and he went to get it, a 4-year-old boy, and he was killed by 2 Dobermans. But that's page 7, and if you weren't flipping through the paper, you'd have missed it. But a couple people rolling or fighting a dog makes front page headlines, but a boy's life doesn't. Yes, these dogs have fought in the past. They're also highly praised for their heart and their intelligence. And certain parts of the country, I believe, Hollywood, Florida right now, they're trying to pass a bond. They're trying to a total genocide program of owning these dogs by making you post a $50,000 bond and have a special permit to own a pit bull. That's totally ridiculous. Most pit bull owners that keep their dog on a chain keep it on a very heavy chain. You don't have to worry, first of all, about your dog getting loose. They double collar them. My dogs are valuable animals. I don't let them run loose.
This homely but affectionate dog one remembers seeing in the movie Patton and Baa Baa Black Sheep on television is often mistaken for a pit bull. Actually, it's an English bull terrier, which came about in the 1860s in England by crossing a Staffordshire bull terrier with a Dalmatian. However, Nick has many characteristics of the American pit bull, especially in its aggressiveness and vice-like grip, as we see at the Patrick Jacob home in the town of Tonawanda.
He seems to know he's tough, but as far as with people, he's never,
How about with children? Do you have children in the house?
Yeah, he plays with them all the time. He likes kids. Like if he sees a kid being walked on the street or something, he'll cry, stuff like that. I've never had a better dog. As wild as he looks out here and that, but he's just extremely obedient.
The dog fighters feel that this is a sport.
They feel that it's a sport. They feel that there's something honorable and noble about it. And I've never, and perhaps never will understand that when you produce fear, pain, and suffering with another animal that's under your control, how you absolve yourself by saying, oh, it's okay, and maybe they don't hurt, and maybe it's something they like to do.
Well, it's a very wide group of people. We've seen some very wealthy people involved in the sport, and we've seen some very poor people involved in the sport. But the thread that binds is an ugliness of the soul. These people are many of them are predisposed toward violence. They are not the kind of people I would say contribute anything of significance to society, because they are insensitive to the suffering of animals, and quite frequently this has a carryover effect on their dealings with other people. Now we know this because of certain studies that were done of people convicted of violent assaults on people in prison. And looking back at their early records, and particularly the records as juveniles, we find a correlation to this kind of aggressive attitude towards society in their early behavior and attitudes towards animals. So any activity that desensitizes people towards animals ultimately desensitizes them towards people.
What do you see as a solution to the pit fights?
The solution to the pit fights is stronger laws. There was a law that was presented to the state legislature last year which had changed it from a misdemeanor to a felony and increased the fine to $50,000. passed both houses. The governor vetoed it because he thought $50,000 was an excessive fine for this operation. But there is gambling involved, and $1,000 is meaningless to these people. That passes their hands all the time.
What kind of legislation would satisfy the Humane Society?
Well, basically, we were very supportive of a bill that was introduced and passed the New York legislature last year, which would have made dogfighting a felony. Unfortunately, the law was not signed by the governor, who believed that the penalties were too severe. I think Governor Carey's a fine fella, and I think what we've got to do is now educate the governor.
How about educating the judges?
This is really a significant need right now. It's very difficult for many judges to impose stiff penalties for first offense. And if you have laws that provide for a maximum of $500 or $1,000 fine, the judge will inevitably reduce the charge to a suspended offense and meaningless amount of money wagered. These dog fighters quite frequently, even as multiple offenders, do not get maximum fines, and even if they did, they wouldn't be valuable. What we want the judges to do, to impose, is to recognize that in a case of animal cruelty, a malicious, premeditated cruelty like dog fighting, the most important thing to do is to take that dog away from the person that is using him in that capacity. Much like in child cruelty. It does no good to take a battered child and put him right back in the home.
The SPCA cannot do this job by itself. We need the support of all the citizens. If they have any information about dog fighting or incidences of dog napping, to pass it on to the police or the SPCA. And B, to express their interest in reviving the bill to increase the fines and the penalty for dog fighting. It is too bad that we live in a society where we have to have laws upgraded to prevent social problems. But that's the reality of it, and that's where we need citizens' help.
What is your opinion of those people who fight dogs?
Well, on television, I can't really tell you, but I think that anybody who replaces their own courage with a surrogate, an animal that they own and invest any of their time or effort or even money into, just basically is probably the lowest form of human being I think you could encounter. I really just feel pretty violent about that myself. If I could react violently to it somehow, I probably would, but I don't think much of those people. I really don't.
You don't see this as a sport at all, do you?
No, not at all. I think it's, if I wasn't on TV, I could use much stronger words. I just don't, I don't see how anyone could stoop to that, to take those poor little animals and put them in there in such treatment as that. I don't think belongs in human society.